Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Paz. With me today, very special guest, of course, a three-time WWE World Tag Team Champion, former WWE Intercontinental Champion. He is, of course, the Mountie, Mr. Jacques Rougeau. Jacques, welcome back to the two-man power trip. How you doing?
How you doing, John?
Doing good. What's going on in your world? What have you been up to? I know you've been very busy with the Wrestling Academy.
Yeah, definitely have been. It's been a tremendous year this year with Wrestling Academy, and we're starting a new competition again in 2023. All the inscriptions have been in, and it's amazing how we had so many inscriptions this year. It was such a great tournament, John, last year. Um, it was a whole year project, and they're recruiting from talent from all over Canada. And then going all the way from the quarterfinals in May, and then in June, and then August, the semifinals and the finals, and having QT Marshall on the giant screen in Montreal, choosing with me the winners of Wrestling Academy, which the four winners, what a great opportunity for them, great visibility along the year. Uh, Jeremy Prophet from Montreal with his girlfriend, Jessica Black, that won the female side, and then Chris Dillon from Newfoundland, and also Matt Black from Ontario that won also. There was four big winners of $5,000, and they spent 3 months at the Nightmare Factory with QT Marshall, Billy Gunn, and Cody Rhodes for training with them every day. And they've been there for 2.5 months. Now they have 2 weeks left, and it's amazing how the opportunity that the Canadian talent has going to the Nightmare Factory. They've booked themselves all over Georgia, Florida, and made some great contacts. So what a great platform for Canadian wrestlers to have Wrestling Academy. And I'm so proud and honored to have put this together with my girlfriend. It's me and my girlfriend that put this together. And this last year we had 40 inscriptions, and this year we had 70 inscriptions, and we got so many good talent from across Canada. It's amazing. And an amazing thing too, John, I gotta admit, is I want to say thank to all my sponsors, because giving $5,000 to four winners this year, and this year we're going to be giving $10,000 to the winners. And so
Wow.
if you go on wrestling-academy.ca, you will see all the new contestants and the candidates that are in this year, the competition that's going to start in May 2023. And then again, QT Marshall was so excited with this project. He was on the finals to judge the finals on a giant screen. But when the competition was finished in August this year, the next morning we talked, and he was so excited. And then he told me, he says, Jacques, we're doing this again this year. I said, yes, sir. I was hoping you'd say that. And I said, well, he says, next year, he says, I want to be there for the quarterfinals and the semifinals and the finals, not only the finals. And he said, I want to be there for the four shows. And he says, I want to choose also the candidates. So I just got back from Atlanta. Actually, I'm in Orlando right now on vacation. But I passed through Atlanta to see my winners of the Nightmare Factory, spend a week there with them 2 weeks ago. And then we chose all the candidates. We chose 34 candidates out of 70, and we did it together. He wanted to choose them too with me this year. So I guess I lost my power, my job. QT Marshall's taking over the thing, but it's amazing, and what a great opportunity for Canadian wrestlers.
How'd you get connected with the monster? Well, not monster, the Nightmare Factory in QT. How'd you guys get connected?
Well, it was amazing, because it was coincidence, because when I started this project, I had the four winners of $5,000, and I was looking to give them something more, like something that would really bring them in, and to give them an opportunity that to hopefully be seen by the big leagues. And so I'd heard just from Jeremy Prophet that there was a school in the States there, that AEW has a great school, and QT Marshall was running it, and with Glazier at the time, so I said, hey, so I sent a message, because Jeremy Prophet had the contact with QT Marshall. So I sent a message to QT. Never knew the guy, never met the guy in my life, and I just sent him a message, and he was so kind. He just returned the call to me, and told me, Jacques, he says, I'd love to take four of your winners and bring them in and And it was so funny because when we started this project last year, I got to bring you into something that's really cool. Is I got QT on the phone, and then I asked QT. I said, QT, I said, I said I have 4 winners of $5,000, and my objective is just to make my winners feel like superstars for a day, for just one day. And I said, so I said, if I get a van together and I drive down to Atlanta, a 24-hour drive, and I said, and I bring my 4 winners of Wrestling Academy, I said, would you give them one day of just an experience of work training with you guys, and you taking a look at their interviews and making them feel like they have a chance to be seen by a big league. And when he told me yes, it was great. And the next thing you know, that was like in like last year or September of last year, and then I started doing podcasts. But I was doing podcasts in Australia. I was doing them in England. I was doing them everywhere. And every time I do a podcast, I was doing them around the States, around the world, actually, and using my notoriety and then getting all these contacts on podcasts and promoting this wrestling in Canada. And every time I was always talking about, hey, my winners are going to go spend one day at the Nightmare Factory. So what I didn't realize is that in time, like a month went by, 2 months went by last year. We're back in November now. And then QT Marshall calls. He sends me a message, says, Jacques, he says, what are you doing? And I went like, holy shit. I said, what did I do? I did something wrong. I hope I didn't do anything wrong, And he says, what are you doing? He says, my phone is red at the Nightmare Factory. He says, everybody, I'm getting calls from everywhere at the Nightmare Factory from people asking me, hey, what's going on with Jacques Rougeau and the winners of this? And I had calls from friends, I had calls from promoters, I had calls from haters that they were trying to stir some shit up, saying, hey, Jacques Rougeau's using your name at the Nightmare Factory. Is it true? Is it true? And so QT told me, he says, listen, he says, why don't we do a deal? That was in November last year. He says, why don't we do something special? He says, Jacques, he says, tell your 4 winners that I'll take them for a week instead of one day. So I went down on my group chat. I had created a group chat, and that were participating in this. And I went the next day. I said, hey, guys, good news. I said, QT Marshall just gave us a week instead of a day for the 4 winners. So you get $5,000, and then you get a week at the Nightmare Factory. So I keep doing podcasts over podcasts. And next thing you know, we came in, it was in February. And then QT was, Jacques, he says, you're doing a helping job. He says, listen, he says, I like your project so much. He says, why don't we give 3 months to the winners? So I went, what? 3 months to the winners? So I went down on my group chat. I said, hey, guys, we're going to have 3 months for the winners and all that. So things really start growing tremendously because, I always said there's 2 things that make it work in the business is knowing the right people and being at the right place at the right time. And being at the Nightmare Factory for 3 months, you get to see a lot of talent coming in and out and superstars and getting to be friends with Billy Gunn and to be friends with Cody Rhodes and to be friends with QT Marshall. So if they like you, who knows where that could go from there? Because the first week you're there, it's a hi, Mr. Marshall, and this. And then the first month you're there is a hi, QT. And then after 2 months, it's hey, QT, a few jokes and this and that. So they become friends. And that's how the business works. And so what a great opportunity. And then along this contest, I had a guy called Zashman in Australia who had a podcast. So I did his podcast. And next thing you know, he was so excited with this project because he'd seen it grow from 1 day to 1 week to 3 months to my winners, going to the Nightmare Factory. So he said, hey, Jacques, he says, I work with this toy company. So he says, why don't we create some figurines, some wrestling figurines of your 4 winners? So, wow. So it's like, hey, this is amazing. So then I put that on my chat, on my group chat. Guys, guess what? You get the $5,000. You get 3 months QT Marshall and figurine refugee, and then the next thing, we're down in March and QT's so excited. He says, Jacques, he says, actually it was in May and then something like that. And because of COVID, QT Marshall, for personal reasons, he couldn't come to Montreal like he was supposed to. He was supposed to be judge on the last day, judge in Montreal. So he did it on the giant screen instead. But because he did it on the giant screen, he sent an interview where I shared with all my group. And he said, Jacques, we're going to take him 3 months. But he says, I'm sorry, I won't be able to be in Montreal for the finals. But he says, I'll be on a giant screen. But he says, to give you guys a bonus, he says, my 4 winners plus 2 others that I'm going to choose, so that's 6 wrestlers out of the contest, I will book you at AEW in Toronto. The first date that AEW goes to Toronto in front of 8,000 people at the Coca-Cola Center. The AEW making their debut in Toronto. So my winners now had all my 4 winners and plus 2. They did a match in Toronto on AEW Dark and Rampage and stuff, and it was amazing all the things that happened with all this, and so now this year, like, QT's so excited, and I stopped by, like I said, at the Nightmare Factory, and if you go see on academy.ca, you'll interviews with QT, contestants, and this is great because now I've already 4 sponsors of $10,000. I have 3 winners this year of $10,000 instead of 4 or 5,000. 10,000. But I already have like 8 sponsors of $5,000, so that was 40,000. And so we had the $30,000 of earnings that we have in sponsorship, plus 10,000 for the plane tickets. And yesterday I had a company just yesterday call me up and they joined too. So we're going to make it $20,000 sponsorship for the flights, the airplane tickets, and 30,000 I will have for the wrestlers. So we will have $50,000 of sponsorship for this contest, which is going to be amazing because last year it cost me $15,000 of my own pocket to make this project work because paying the airfares, paying the hotels in my coming across Canada, it was like, and then plus we had the 4 winners of $5,000, and then so we had found the sponsors of $5,000 for them, but we forgot to get the hotel, so it cost me like $15,000 in my pocket to make that tournament work this year. So next year, now we're going to be more prepared. We'll have $50,000, 30 for the winners, 20. So if everything goes well, I won't lose any money next year. I'll be giving back to the Canadian talent, making this project wonderful, seen around the world on podcasts around the world, giving them exposure, visibility, and an opportunity again to go to the Nightmare Factory plus $10,000. So I'm so proud and happy and to put this project together. It's almost like I'm 62 years old and I'm living a dream again of wrestling, and it's amazing, John.
That's pretty cool, like, what they're able to do and, like, kind of the benefit that they get from being a part of it, because it's like they get to, leapfrog, they get to move up in some steps here. Maybe they wouldn't normally get to be seen on AEW Dark, etc.
Well, what's amazing is, like Jeremy Prophet was telling me, and the winners, they wrestled in Florida and Georgia. They made contacts. They made contacts with the Impact and different companies that they made contacts. They're hoping to maybe break through and get a contract, because what this competition is, John, it's a platform for Canadian wrestlers to make it in the States. That's been a big problem for Canadian wrestlers the whole time, is getting working visas, working papers. So since I always told the talent that was joining Wrestling Academy, I can't do miracles. I won't be able to get you working papers. But if I could get you 3 months at the Nightmare Factory, and then you have the foot in the door, and then if you wrestle around Georgia, Florida, and all that, Carolinas and stuff like that, and you make contacts, then at least, I will have helped you make, like you said, a little step ahead there to maybe get recognized, or someone who and you gotta think that, like I'm thinking of last year, there was like 40 contenders. There was 22 from Quebec, and there was a lot of contenders that were so wrestlers, had a lot of inscriptions and stuff, and believe in the project. A lot of Canadian wrestlers from the outside. There was a few haters that were trying to destroy this project, and so there was a lot of jealousy, and you know how that is in the business. So, this guy's trying to start something, so let's break his legs, when we can. So but after all the wrestlers got their Rampage visibility at AEW, their $5,000, their 3 months at the Nightmare Factory. So this year, when we asked to send the inscriptions, I had so much great talent. I got the best talent in Canada that just say, "Hey, I'm in. $10,000. I know Jacques Rougeau is going to pay the money. He paid this year, so he's credible." So it's like so I built a lot of credibility around this, and now this year, it's so exciting because the thing I'm happy the most happy, I must say, is that QT Marshall is going to have the last final decision who's passing to the quarter semifinals, and three judges around the ring. The way we work this is they come out, they have an interview, a live interview at the Club Soda in Montreal. It's always happening in Montreal at the Club Soda. They come out on the stage, they have a live interview. They got to perform a live interview. Then they get in the ring. They have an 8-9 minute match, and then there's judges around the ring, and it's like a reality show. And then the judges say who they like, why they like him, and next thing you know, you'll have QT Marshall on the giant screen that's going to come in and it's going to put the icing on. They say, well, I'm going to take this guy or girl or whatever the situation is because I like the appearance. I like they were dressed, the way they were dressed. I like their charisma. I like their charisma. I like their ability in the ring. I see potential in this person, so I'm taking this person. So I won't have, like last year, I had a lot of pressure because I had to eliminate people. And this year I won't have to do it. It's going to be all QT who's going to eliminate them. So I won't have any enemies, but it's going to be very, very exciting.
When you're looking at this and doing this, can anybody be a part of it, or do they have to have a little bit of experience going in?
Well, now, to be honest with you, quality wrestlers across Canada. It's the best. It's the best wrestlers because, yes, and most of the wrestlers have like between 5 and 15 years of experience, and you're talking about top talent now. You're talking in every from Vancouver, from Edmonton, from Calgary, from Winnipeg, from Saskatoon, from Halifax, all the way to the East Coast, from Montreal to Ontario, Toronto, and it's all these federations that they're the best wrestlers in Canada that have joined Wrestling Academy, and a couple of them that are not the best, but they're really good. And because we had 70 talent, we only could pick 34. There was 10 women and 24 men. So when you look at it's all the cream of the crop. So when you go on wrestling-academy.ca, go see the talent that's there. It's amazing. We're going to actually have videos that we receive from them, like 30-second videos, and a minute videos, but 30 seconds of talking and 30 seconds of highlights. At this point in time, my girlfriend is starting to put on because she takes care of the website. So it's a lot of work. So we had to take the contest the last one. So we're switching, but all the pictures of the guys are there now. And but in the next week or so, we're going to start having the video. So you'll be able to go click on the picture of the guy or the girl, and you'll see their capacity. And you'll see the amazing talent that's subscribed. It's amazing because I know most of all the promoters across Canada, and they all told me, Jacques, these two, they're the best. They're the best in Alberta. They're the best in Saskatoon or Regina. They're the best in Moncton. They're the best. So it's amazing. The talent that we have this year, I wouldn't want to be in QT Marshall's shoes to have to choose, because even just now, from the 7th of May coming up, we have a couple of matches on the 4th of June, their quarterfinals, those two first shows. And there's some matches set up between, and that was another thing too, John, that was amazing, that I'm so happy with, because everybody thought, well, Jacques, he's going to put a really good wrestler against a wrestler that's not so good. So he makes sure that when he gets at the end, he has the best talent, because you want the show to get better and better and better. That's not how I'm doing it. My first show I'm putting the best of Alberta against the best of Ontario. I got Jesse V in there, one of the best guys in Ontario, against one guy of the Maritimes, Giant Orion. You'll see, and they're both extremely great talent. I got a match of 4 women in there that are totally just top-notch wrestlers, and I put them all together in the quarterfinals, and there's only 2 out of 4 of those 4 girls that are going to pass to the semifinals. And then the same thing between Jesse V, who's one of the favorites, and Giant Orion, who's one of the favorites. They're colliding in the quarterfinals on the first show. So as of the first show, QT Marshall is going to be sitting on the giant screen at home in Atlanta, and he'll be in Montreal on the giant screen, and he's going to be going like, holy mackerel, I got to eliminate. I got to take someone away from the 10,000, the 3 months at the Nightmare Factory at his school. And so there's going to be so much anticipation and so much excitement just to watch this happening.
Very, very cool. And like you said, a lot of pressure on QT. If he gets this wrong, he's going to get a lot of heat.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad I don't get the heat this year. He gets all the heat, but he also has he's a great talent. You know, I've seen him in action. He's a great wrestler. He's got a great position in AEW, and you know, and I think that however he chooses, I'm fine with it because I think he's in a great position to help people. You know, and eventually, and and I'm just there to give back to the wrestling business, which I was so good to me over the years. I wrestled for 45 yees, so you know, I can honestly say I had 10 good years in the WWF, and so I want to give a chance to the young people, the young talent, to live their dream, to live their passion, just about like I did. I'm 62 years old now, and I'm still living my passion now in a different way. But I'm living my passion. I'm into wrestling like crazy. I'm having fun. When I was at the Nightmare Factory, I actually stopped and I gave a lesson there at the Nightmare Factory with just for the fun with the coaches. They were at TV, they were doing TV, and so there was only the assistant coach that was there. So I told QT, I said, "Do you mind if I get in the ring when you're not there? I'll go have some fun with the beginners, you know." And what a fun time I had just by taking the talent and going back to basics, like showing them how to lock up, showing them that when they step in the ring, you know, the guys were stepping in the ring to go for a training, like, you know, to do matches together, and they were flat-footed and they were just waiting for the bell to ring. I said, "Hey, don't work like that, guys." I said, the minute you get out of the dressing room on the aisle, you are a personality. You have a fight on your hand. You're getting into a fight in the people's eyes. You got to tell them you're going into a fight. When you start going up the stairs to the ring, your two eyes got to be on your opponent. They can't be nowhere else but on your opponent. When you come in, you see, and you're looking at him, and you never let him go with the eyes, and you're not flat-footed. You're at the end of your toes. If he charges you, you got to be able to move. You got to make this realistic. And I was going back to the basic and all those stuff, and I had so much beginners at QT school. There was so fun because when I finished the class, it was like 15 guys around me just saying, "Wow, how much fun we had today." You know, it was different because I think that any coach, any teacher, I had a school for 20 years in Montreal. I had my own school. So anybody who teaches wrestling has different philosophies and different ideas and different approaches. And so then there's not one I think better than the other. I just think it's great for talent, like for young talent, to have an old timer like me come in and just give them my 2 cents, you know, and just give them a few ideas, and they keep what they want, they let go what they don't like, and if they have different coaches like that, I think that it's good for them. But it's definitely good for me, who mentally, who had so much fun just going back in the ring and living my passion and having fun.
And it's awesome because of your experience, like you said, at least 10 years in WB, you're in WCW. I mean,
Mhm.
that goes a long way. The guys that look at that, they want to make it, you're going to go to somebody that's been there, that's done that, Intercontinental champion, tag champion, and so on.
Well, you know, I appreciate that, but I was gonna say I was very lucky in my career, but I've been a third generation wrestler. You know, I was like 5 years old going to the Montreal Forum, seeing my dad, my great aunt, and my brother and my older brother, and just my kids were wrestlers, and me being a teacher for 20 years, and I was 5 years old and I started being around wrestling. I was like 5 years old going around my pool. I lived in the outskirts of Montreal, about 20 miles northeast of Montreal by the river, and we had a pool by the water, and I remember Abdullah the Butcher and Joe Leduc coming at my house there, going to talk business with my dad and my uncle because they were working against him, and the sheik would come, and I remember the things. I was like 5, 6 years old, and I'd put a sheet on my head there, like just a sheet of towel, and I'd be walking around the pool like bad sheik. I was imitating them, you know, having fun, and you
Yeah.
know, I started wrestling at the 5, 6 years old. So being spent my life in the business, I think it's fun that there's so many things that I've learned in all those years being around the business that I think that I didn't have to teach it. It was like, it's when you get in the ring and you have that kind of knowledge, you just say things and do things that maybe they didn't catch with other teachers, or they didn't see, and so they see the experience. I think what I'm trying to say is I was I was glad to share the la profondeur that we say in French, the depth of the things that I, the how to hit the ropes, how to fish, how and things that a lot of people say, well, you before you run, you got to learn to.
You got to walk, right? Or crawl, walk, run, right?
Well, not well, exactly. You got it, my man. Not run, not walk. It's crawl. You got to crawl. Then when you were born, you didn't start walking, you start crawling. And so when you get
Yep.
in the ring, you got to learn the basics of how not to hurt your opponent, how to fall, how to lock up, how to facial expressions and everything. And sometimes I was doing my lessons with new talent that would come in, new kids that were young, and we'd be doing basics for like whole basics for like 3 months. And at the end of 3 months, I made sure that all the talent that was in the ring, they knew how to hit no breaks, their neck in the back, the way you hit the rope, and all these little things that we were teaching. But once the class was growing, everybody was like, I had Kevin Owens was my student. He was 14 years old, and I had him until 18 years old. From 14 to 18 years old, I taught him how to walk, to crawl, and to run in the ring, and to talk and everything. So it was fun because Kevin Owen was a funny case where he was very talented, very, very talented. And he was one of those guys that was always like, well, Jacques, aren't we going to learn something else? Like, because he learned things fast. And I'd always have to tell him, Kevin, this is teamwork. We're going to advance when everybody is good. It's just like you got to be patient, but he was always ready to go further and further because he was very talented. But that was the fun thing about my class is when I took them in, I spent so many time with the basic of, you could have the most beautiful house on the mountain, the most beautiful house, but if the house doesn't have a good foundation, it's going to fall. When the tornado hits, it's going to fall. But if you have a good foundation, the house will stick. It'll stay there. And that's the way we taught at my school. So all this to say that I'm so happy today to be able to live my passion like I'm doing right now. I'm so anxious to for the 7th of May next year of Wrestling Academy again, and seeing all these young talent and great talent. But I got to be honest with you. Wrestling's changed a bit in the last few years.
Big time. Seems like that. It may be too much of a change. Do you like that? Is it easy to adjust with where we're going with wrestling?
Here's the funny thing, John. I'm not going to get into all this, but 35 years ago, 30 years ago, I had a big falling out with Vince McMahon, and a big falling out, and he didn't keep his word, and I'm a man that's always been a man of my word, and he didn't keep his word, so I just quit the business with them. I just turned my back on WWF, and it was it. I never watched TV after that because every time I was watching TV, I'd see him, and I wouldn't want to see him. So I just turned everything off. So what happened there is guys like John Cena, like CM Punk, and all those guys, the famous guys, I don't know them because I've never watched wrestling. So I had my wrestling school for 20 years. And the ones that I do know I've heard about was like a John Cena because he was making movies, and my students at my wrestling school talked to him. Of course, The Rock I knew him because I worked with him when he was Marvia. I worked with him before that. So, but all the superstars that came, I don't know their names. I don't know anybody in the business because I didn't watch it. So by not watching the business and by not wanting to create scenarios in my shows, because I was running my territory for 20 years before COVID in Montreal and Quebec. So for me to create my shows and my wrestling school, I wanted to be original. So I didn't want to copy either anything. So I stuck with the old school. I stuck where when you give a drop kick, the guy who receives a drop kick doesn't get up before the guy who gave it. It's like,
Yep.
You sell the drop kick and you show the people that you're hurting and you complain and you tell a story. You make less is more. I've always been like that. Sometimes they go in the ring and they do 20,000 things, and nothing means nothing. I would do 5 things, but they all meant something. The 5 things meant something, and people had time to have empathy with you, feel you, like, understand what's going on. And so it was a different kind of storytelling. So when I started my wrestling academy last year, it was funny because I was seeing the matches and I was seeing the guys, and I was going like, okay, I'm not teaching you guys. This is not my school. This is you guys performing and doing what you guys want to get over, and things have changed so much in the ring. But I helped them a little bit with like working the crowd, working the cameras and stuff like that. But the work, I was like 30 years behind, so there was no like punches like we used to do, and there was no more like working a headlock, for 5-6 minutes, and coming back to the headlock, and making sense with moves, and just make everything count and mean something. So it was a big adjustment for me. But like guys are giving a lot of forearms now, like a lot of forearms. There's not as much punches. It's more forearms, and it's unorthodox. It's like it's hard to follow. But it's the business of today, and I'm not in it, so I don't have to worry about it. The only thing I have to worry is giving a platform for the wrestlers to do what they see, I guess, in the big leagues, and to try to be noticed like the way it is today. And I remember meeting Brett. I was in England. It was a couple of months ago. I was on an autograph signing, and so many times Brett came up to me and he told me, he said, Jacques, and I remember even like 10 years ago, I met Brett at another time, and he told me, he said, Jacques, you'd go nuts if you were in the business. He says they give you a sheet now, and you got to read your sheet for the interviews. It's like it's not even you anymore. There's no more personality. It's like you have to learn it by heart, and which I would have been zero at, because me, it all came from my brain and my heart, and if I was doing an interview with me and Gene or something, and I'd step on his shoes, I'd say, let me tell you something, big boss man. And then I'd say, me and Gene, you're stepping on my feet. Move out of here. Give me some space. But it would be me speaking, and living my promo. But to read a piece of paper and to have a script that people tell me how to be me, that's it's too different to me. I don't think I would have been good anyway in the business.
So SummerSlam 91, you and the boss man, you getting sent to the slammer, that wasn't scripted as far as like what you were saying and the way you reacted. That was kind of off the cuff.
It was all me, baby. It was all like Jimmy Hart would say, it was all me, baby. It was all me, baby. Jimmy Hart, one of the greatest managers of all times. But yeah, it was so fun. No, all the scripts that were done, it was like they gave you some ideas, and then on you just go ahead and create. And so we were great creators in those days, and most improvise. Like interviews were improvised. I remember going through, like, we had the 2 TV days a month there. Every 21 days we had 2 TV days, and we'd have like 40 curtains that had to go in, one for Japan, one for Mexico, one for England, one for here, one for every town. And then you just go in, and the only thing they give you is your opponents. And then from then on, you just go in there and do your promo. They want a minute promo, they want 30-second promo, they want 45 seconds promo. You just come out. Me and Raymond together was like that, and as the Mountie, and with Carl Willett, the Quebecers, and we'd come in and we just shoot what we had to do. But it was something that always came easy to me. I always thought that I had an easy and a pretty decent promo, so it was easy for me to do that, because I'd always lived my character. I was always believing who I was when I was in my personality, I guess.
So it's easy to play the Mountie and be that heel that everybody hated, and you're believing what you're saying.
It's easy to be an asshole when you are one. No. But it's always been a fantastic thing. I always said to everybody, if they have a chance to be a heel in their life, like in my time, it was awesome. Anybody can be a babyface, but but to become a good heel, that's another story. And to play and to play the heel is fun, because I remember me and Raymond, when we turned from the Rougeau brothers to the fabulous Rougeau brothers, with the little American flags, and we start laughing, with their the wrong dates of like wishing Happy Thanksgiving when it was Memorial Day, and just waving those flags, saying we're and singing those songs like. We don't like heavy metal. We don't like rock and roll. All we like to listen to is Barry Manilow. Hey, we're all American. But we had some fun in there, like, you know, and yeah, it was fun. Being a heel was fun, and there was a lot of truth too, because you know, you can say what you want, but I think that the best characters and the best gimmicks that worked in life is the ones that you believed in, you know, and then we had so much heat, me and Raymond, like speaking French and being from Canada, you know, and those goddamn Canadians, you know, and then our money wasn't worth nothing either. Like there was 40% less money, so the boys hated us when they had to come to Canada. They would lose 40% on their money, and they'd hear us talk French in the wrestling room, and they hated us because they couldn't understand it. And then we'd always be on time, me and Raymond, you know, for the shows, always on time, always dressed up well. And so for those who weren't doing that, then and Vince wasn't helping our situation. He was always saying, "Why don't you?" You know, I remember having a double shot one time, and the guys were pissed off, so they got in late for the second shot. There, they wanted to, and when they came into the room, like around 7:15, the show was at 7:30. Raymond and I, we'd been in the room since 6:30, and then we had managed to take our OAG out, our flight guide. It was a book that had all the flights around the United States there that you could have with you, that shows you every month. I'd get that flight guide, so if ever you had needed to change a flight or something, and we'd always manage to be on time to at the second show. And then Vince would always, when he'd come up with a big meeting to give some shit to everybody, like, you know, and he'd always come up and say, well, why aren't you like the Rougeau brothers? You know, they're always on time. and he was putting heat on our ass.
Yeah.
Big time. But anyway, but all that to say that I wish I could go back and do some things over. But I never was a bad person or a mean person. I never picked on anybody. And I had my faults, like everybody has their faults. I was very immature. But the one thing I was is I was good at doing my gimmicks, you know, and doing my characters. And that was the most important, that I was living my passion and having fun doing it.
And that great theme song, that might be one of the greatest theme songs of all time, the All American Boys, right? I mean, it's got to be up there.
You know, Jimmy Hart told me it was our two songs were just absolutely amazing. Even the one I'm the Mountie, I'm handsome, I'm brave, I'm strong. That was I'm the Mountie, because I enforce the law. Run, you could try to Mountie, always get this back. And that song too, I go in Comic Cons, I go around the world still today, and people start singing that song to me, both songs, one with Raymond. But Jimmy Hart was the greatest, like I said before, the greatest manager of all times, because I don't care what you say of all the other great managers, nobody compares to Jimmy Hart. And I'm not saying that because he was my manager a couple of times. I'm just saying it because he was one of the only managers that I know that would give all the credibility to his boys. He would never come into an interview, never like, I'm the brain, or I'm the smartest one, or I'm this, or I'm that. He'd always say, let me tell you something, my man here and my man here. And he was always talking about his men, never about himself. He'd never try to steal the time or to give him credibility. And he was making your music for you. He was always giving you advice, you know, and he helped me so much in the business, Jimmy Hart, you know. So I could tell you honestly, the most unselfish manager that I've ever seen. And funny, because when we go in Comic Cons today, and I was with him just last week in Virginia for a guy named Chris, and he had a Comic Con there, and he was there with Greg Valentine and myself, and it's amazing the line that Jimmy had, you know, in front of him. It just never stopped. He never stopped signing, and he's always, I think he's like 78 years old, and he's got all his hair on his head, and he may put a little bit of shoe paint in it, but he's got all his hair in his head, and he's still going, and he's happy, and he's talking to the fans, and I can see the fans so happy to talk, and he's still, every time he's dressed up with his megaphone, and he's like, so people go back and they see him, and they're nostalgic. they see him, and they see me with my Mountie suit on. I always have my suit, my stick. I have my shot stick, and so people, when they come up in those Comic Cons and they see us, it's like, wow, they're reliving some times that they were younger, like 30 and 35 years ago. So Jimmy Hart was, I'll always say it, he's the greatest manager and the most unselfish manager of all times.
Who is the one, I guess, would it be Vince or would it be Jimmy Hart? Whose idea was to put you guys with Jimmy and make you guys into heels and turn you guys into the All-American boys?
It was Vince's idea to switch from the Rougeau brothers to the fabulous Rougeau to Memphis and put Jimmy with us. That was Vince. But the Mountie was me. When I came back, it was one of my deals. I said, I want to have Jimmy Hart as my manager. And because I was so happy. Jimmy was the kind of guy that would go around and we'd land in, it's funny because at the time, all the boys, most of the boys, when they'd go into a town, they'd arrive at, whether it's in Europe or anywhere around the world, the first things they'd be looking for is a gym, a bar, and a strip joint, or something to plan, and for the evening, and some of them contacts for some different kind of necessary things that weren't legal or whatever, but they all had their things that they had to take care of when they got into town. But Jimmy Hart was always like me. He'd always like, we'd love to go shopping. We'd like to go see the bootleggers. Like, we'd go. I remember going to London, going to the Underground. We'd land there, and first thing we'd do is we'd go there, and where they all the bootleggers would create some marketing things that weren't legal, but they were so beautiful, like big frames and stuff of the Mountie or the Fabulous Joe Brothers and things, the T-shirts and shirts and all that good stuff. So me and Jimmy, and after the show, and Jimmy and I, was always the same thing, is rush to the hotel, go to bed, and get up the next morning, and first one at the airport, first one at the gym, first one, doing his business. So we had a lot of compatibility, Jimmy and I. Yeah, he was a great guy. He's just a great guy.
When you put you and Jimmy together, like you said, with the Mountie, that's great. You winning the Intercontinental title was great. Was that a surprise, winning the title? Because you beat Bret Hart at a house show.
I didn't expect that. It was just to transfer the title from Bret to Rowdy Piper. They just needed someone to do that. So, because I heard I lost my title because I was the shortest lived Intercontinental champion that ever existed, but I heard someone beat me to it now after 30 years. But I was the one that had the shortest reign for 2 days. But I was very happy because Vince chose me to do that, and he thought I was the guy to do it for them. And I had 2 great matches when I beat Bret, and I also, when Piper beat me, and for the title, was people that remember those matches. It's incredible, and it's what's even more amazing and special is, like, I was only champion for like 48 hours, and every time I go in Comic Cons or every time my picture's signed or anything, I always have the Intercontinental belt around my waist. Yep. And it's like, it's so funny. It's like even my dolls, they all have the Intercontinental title around the waist. So anyway, so it's I'll say, like I said, in those days, when I only days, I made sure I took pictures of it.
Yeah.
It's just to make sure, because I knew I only had it for 2 days. So last night I wanted the belt. I called a photographer and a newspaper guy in Montreal, because I marketed myself very much in my hometown during the years and with contacts and friends. And so I called this newspaper guy up, and it was like 11 o'clock at night. The guy must be about 60 years old. But anyway, so I wake him up out of his bed, and I say, Andre, I said, I'm going to send you a picture tomorrow. I said, can you put in the paper? I said, I just won the Intercontinental. He answers me, says, Jacques, it's 11 o'clock at night. He says, call me on Wednesday. Let's say it was Monday. He says, call me on Wednesday. I said, I can't, Andre. I can't call you on Wednesday. I got to have the picture in tomorrow, because I knew in 2 days I wasn't going to be champion anymore. But it was, that was funny. So anyway, all that to say that I made sure and took pictures with the belt when I had it for those 2 days.
Smart. And at that point, the Intercontinental title meant a lot. I mean, at that point, everybody loved that title, and they weren't throwing it around willy-nilly. That meant a lot. So you being Intercontinental champion is going to be remembered forever, because that title was so important.
And it's funny you say that, because, A lot of people tell me that, a lot of people, they tell me that the same words you said. It's funny because in those days, the Intercontinental title meant something. And it's funny that people say that. I don't see very much the difference. So I haven't been following wrestling, so I don't know. But anyway, it was a great time. It was I think the '80s that we were in, the time that we're in, from WrestleMania 3 at 93,000 people at the Pontiac Silverdome to when I was the Mountie and then the Quebecers. It was a great era from like 80, 85 to 95. For me, it was like, I think it was actually 85 to 91, 92, 93 was the best time as far as, and if I had to break that down, I'd say the best time that wrestling was is Coco Beware and Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik and the Nikolai Volkov and all these guys that meant King Kong Bundy and Kamala and you go back in those days when it was fun to see the gimmicks. Everybody that had a gimmick meant something. Jake the Snake and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, and then I go on and on and on. But those days to me were magical because every character, they're all icons. They're all in the Hall of Fame today, and they're just, I think they meant something.
Man, the golden era, I always call it the Hogan era, the Hulk Hogan era, because that's his era. He's the top of the mountain guy, and everybody else
Absolutely.
is kind of underneath. But man, what an era! That to me, that's the best era in wrestling ever.
I believe so too, and and I was so lucky when he came and he put me over in Montreal in front of my hometown. That was amazing that he did that for me, and he brought up my credibility and my notoriety so much that he actually he brought me a step higher in the business, and so always be not only an icon, but he'll be somebody. I remember a time we had a double shot there again. We were in Washington the afternoon, and we were in northern New York that night, and Vince had some little private planes at the air for us to jump on from one show to the other. And I remember Hulk had his own Learjet, while all the others, the boys, are traveling in this like 20 seated, and this is before we shot. Hulk came in and he said, and he had a big box in his hand. He says, "Hey guys, I got some sandwiches for you guys." And said, "I know you didn't eat and stuff." And he took the time to bring a box of sandwiches for us, And I said, "Man," I said, "he didn't have to do that." That was really, really cool. And so I always liked Hulk.
Pretty amazing that he jobbed to you too, because I mean, I believe he was WCW champion at that point. The NWO was killing it at that point. I mean, he was at the top of the mountain when he lost to you in Montreal in '97.
It was amazing. He had this kind of respect that I may have to sit down with him one time over a drink or something and ask him why in the hell did he do it. But I'll tell you, there's still some unanswered questions in my mind. But I've always related to the fact that I think he had a lot of respect for the Rougeau family. I think he had a lot of respect that Raymond and I, when we opened the shows where he was at, and then around the world, that he enjoyed the performances that we were giving, and the professionalism that we had in the airports, and always being nice to the people, signing autographs, being on time, and I also think that. The fact that I stood up to the Dynamite Kid, also, I think that made a big difference in the way he thought about me, because whether you like it or not, the Bulldogs, they never ribbed Hulk, but I'm sure somewhere down the line Hulk must have been afraid that they start on him, and because they were pretty wild, and so the fact that I put a stop of bullying in those days, so I think that and Hulk, knowing that I'm not a real fighter in life, I'm not a tough guy, I've never known to be a tough guy. It was so hard for me to do what I did, and I think that maybe he grown a respect for me, and I always thought it was that. But anyway, who knows? But I was one of the luckiest men alive today to say that Brett never beat him, and I'm the only
Yeah.
Canadian to ever beat Hulk Hogan. Pin him 1, 2, 3, no gimmicks, right in the middle, 1, 2, 3, and
Yeah, in a main event, and 10,000 people were there. They're pretty amazing.
there was more than 10,000. There was 18,000.
Oh, wow. Oh my God.
And
Okay.
it was amazing. Yeah, it was 18,000. Amazing. It was and then what was more amazing than that is that it was my hometown, and 9 were booing me because I gone. And then, but when I beat him at the end, I worked so hard during the match. You know, I sold for him really good, and I kept respecting the rules, and back to me about the 60-40 for me at the end. And what a battle it was. And then and I was doing some things in during the match, and people were booing me, completely booing me. And but I worked my way at the end, where finally, when I got the pin, the 1, 2, 3 pin there, you could go see that on YouTube anytime. Jacques Rougeau versus
Yeah.
Hulk
Oh, yeah.
Hogan. You'll see it pops up right away, and you'll see at the end there. You'll see if you watch the beginning of the match, the crowd how they hate me, and at the end of the match, they're kind of cheering for me there at the end. So what a great moment in history for me.
Absolutely amazing. And you mentioned Dynamite. It was more Dynamite, obviously, than Davy Boy, but that was basically what it is. Too much of a bully, you kind of had to settle it, basically. Because I know Raymond was injured at the time, and obviously he was saying that you should be the one that's settling it, not him, because he's the older brother can't come in for you. You gotta do it yourself.
Yeah, and Raymond's a tough guy. He's a
Yeah,
fighter too. Like
yeah,
he's a really tough guy, my brother Raymond. He was brought up, and he never had cold eyes for nobody. He me it was harder. Me, I was more an artiste. More I was a guy that was having fun and laughing, and so when I was put in that situation there, that I didn't want to, like, in future, and I had to do something about it, and it was so hard for me to do it, and it took me a week to finally, and got my courage. And so yeah, it was but you know what, out of everything that I love the most on this planet, apart from my kids, was my dad. And then my dad was my hero. My dad, since I was young, I was watching him wrestle, and he was a real tough guy. He was a real gentleman. He was loved by everybody, my dad. And I didn't want to embarrass him, and I didn't want to be so when I got beat up in Miami by Dynamite Kid there, I my father was there sitting Snowbird, and he witnessed that. And so I went into kind of a trauma, really bad for me for a whole week. And then I realized, I'm going to do this for my dad. I'm just for the reputation of the Rougeau family. I'm not doing it for me. If it was just for me, I'd go home, quit the goddamn business. But just for the image of the Rougeau family, dad, I got to do something. And I didn't want to leave the Rougeau name as a coward and stuff like that, and just quit the business. So it was very, very hard for me to do what I did. So yeah. But anyway, karma worked everything out, and I was lucky after that I did that, take care of the situation, because after that, that's when I become Intercontinental champion, tag team champion. I beat Hulk Hogan. That's what I always say to everybody when I give conferences. Out of that, if anything that was wonderful of that situation, of that horrible time in my life, was that when I quit the business with WWF in 98, 97, I started my own territory in Montreal. For 20 years, I was doing conferences in schools. I was doing conferences against bullying. I became a spokesman against bullying in Quebec, Canada, all over the place. And I helped so many kids to understand that, facing bullying, it's so important. It's the hardest thing is to pronounce it, to bring it up, that it's happening. Because I always explain to the kids, like, I haven't known one situation in my life that's brought up they were being bullied where it didn't stop. It always stops once you bring it up. But no matter how scary it is, because you're always thinking, like, oh my God, if I stooge on him or something, he's going to beat me up worse, or it's going to be worse. It's never worse. Every time you say it and you bring it out in the open, it's going to work itself out. One way or the other, it's going to work itself out. So that's what I was explaining to all the kids in schools, and it was so gratifying for me to do that for so many years, and teaching them how to work together also, like, that the biggest power is team, is working together. Like, if you see someone that's in trouble or being laughed at, then go in there and take them out of there. And, like, and because if you're just there sitting in the class, and if somebody's bullying somebody and you're laughing, with the guy who's bullying just because you're afraid of the bully and you want to stay on his good side, or you're just for the personal reasons that you know, if you're laughing at his bad jokes, he's not going to touch you because you know since you're encouraging him, you know, then you're as accomplice as he is, you're as bad as he is. So you know, but if you ignore that, you know, I know it's not going to be easy sometimes because the bullies, they feed off certain people in class. You know, they look around, make sure they get their energy there. But if you stop giving them their energy, sure, it's not going to be easy at the beginning. But then after that, you know, what is he going to do if there's nobody listening to him anymore and laughing at his jokes anymore? He's going to have to stop, and it's just going to stop. So I showed the classes and the students to be a team, you know, in my conferences, how to work together. And so that was so much gratifying for me, that the things that I've learned and seen and all the compliments I've had from parents that changed their lives of their kids, you know, in schools and stuff like that, that they weren't taking the school bus and now they were doing it now, and I just changed their lives. So out of that bad thing that happened with Dynamite Kid, a lot of great things happened. Although it was very painful at the time when it happened, I've had a lot of great things happen to me after that.
Great lesson, great life lesson for everybody, for sure. So as we hit the wind down here, we head towards the finish. Give us a last big push for the Wrestling Academy.
Well, I just want to say, if anybody wants to follow so this contest, it's amazing. It's you may see some of those Canadian talent make it in the big league someday, and they be coming out of Wrestling Academy. And go see on wrestling-academy.ca. You could see the whole competition of last year, the 4 winners, and you could see all the contestants that are there this year, and follow it with we'll have on YouTube. We'll be putting this on YouTube also, so you'll be able to follow the quarterfinals that start on the 7th of May, 4th of June, and then it goes in August, September for the finals, semifinals and finals, and you'll see QT Marshall choosing the winners and all that, and then going to the Nightmare Factory. And what a great experience for any wrestler or any wrestling fan that wants to. And one most important thing I want to say too, John, is I think it's the most important for me, is I'm an old. When I quit the business in WWF, I had to do something that was different. So I started a wrestling company called the Family Shows, Jacques Rougeau's Family Shows, where there was no allowed chairs, no allowed tables, no allowed. There was no girls in my shows at the time, because girls with guys. There was no the talent wasn't allowed to cuss or swear. There was no middle fingers. There was no so all the talent. I was selling out all my crowds, like 3, 4, 5,000 people coming to my shows, and there was no middle fingers and stuff like that. So I was selling the tickets myself in the companies, and I was telling the presidents of all the companies, you could bring your 4-year-old, because during one of those matches you'll see the Mummy against Spider-Man. You'll see
Right, right.
it was all based on high flying, acrobatics, charisma, on costumes, on talent, on wrestling, and wrestling ability. You know, like so there was no posts, there was no chairs, there was no nothing. So I always told the presidents of the companies that I was selling the tickets, bring your family and come live a great night of wrestling. So on Wrestling Academy, thank God, is the same thing. And we're talking about 35 years later, that I quit the WWF. It's still the same project. There's not allowed to swear. There's no middle fingers. There's no cussing. It's all show me some wrestling. Show me some talent. Show me some storyline. Show me some high flying. Show me some. There's a lot of high flying, incredible high flyings. But that's great. And then but I help the talent when we put these matches together. I go on Zoom with them like a month before their match, and I help them put their match together, the talent. And I make sure that we flip a coin, heads or tails, to see who's going over and who's doing the job. Right on Zoom, we flip a coin with all the, and then I make sure that the guy who's doing the job, he gets 60% of them looks good. So because not to influence the judges. So the guy who's going over only gets 40% of the match. So everybody has time to show their credibility and show, and it's amazing. It's a contest. So if you want to follow us this year, it starts in the month of May. You could go starting as of now. You start seeing some promos. I'm starting to hype some matches and having some fun. Wrestling-academy.ca. And you could also go on my Facebook which is, I know it's not the greatest media thing, but I'm on Facebook. I'm a Facebook kind of guy. And if you go and you'll see Jacques Rougeau, JACQUESROUGEAU, and you'll see a picture of me and my girlfriend. And then you can see all the videos that I'm putting on there for Wrestling Academy and everything that's happening for this year coming up. So you'll be able to go then and follow the competition live and every show with QT Marshall. 1 week after the show's done in Montreal, it's filmed. I put it on YouTube. I put it on my website. So you'll be able to follow 1 week later to see who's eliminated and who keeps going. And by the time, from about 2 weeks from now, we should have all the videos put up. The pictures are already all up, but then you'll have all the videos of the talent to see the great talent that we have in Canada from the Pacific coast all the way to the East Coast. And it's amazing competition. And then let me say, John, to you, thank you very much for having me today on the show. And then I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and then happy holidays for everybody. And I hope everybody has the chance to find some people they love during this good month of December. It's always a good time to spend with family.
Absolutely. Jacques, thank you so much for all the time. Really appreciate it.
So we'll talk soon, John.
Yes. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.